Okay, hi guys. So this week we are tackling the topic of the uprisings and the processes, that or its consequences, and how it led to reinstatement of authoritarianism in Egypt. So the two questions we are will answer this week. So we are trying to investigate popular mobilization in order to see how social actors manage to tilt the balance against the state, the balance of power between state and society, and manage to force Mubarak to step down. And the processes or the possible dynamics that might have led to democratization, and what precluded the process, and what accounts for the authoritarian reinstallation of the authoritarian or neo-authoritarian regimes. So actually here on your we are trying basically to investigate like three main dynamics, or to unravel the mechanisms in order to answer the three main processes, and they are part of the same process. It's kind of continued process. We are trying to unravel its mechanisms. So the popular mobilization that actually broke out on 25th of January 2011. So here on your left-hand side, you hear the NDP building was set on fire, and it was like kind of unclear whether the protesters, did that, or some supporters, or some like the NDPians actually did that in order to erase evidence from the authoritarian decades, or from Mubarak era. And then you have on your right hand side, on the top, so you have here Tahrir Square, and protesters celebrated the departure or the removal of Mubarak on February 11th. And fast forwarding the events here, when Morsi assumed power and got elected as a president in June 2012, and he tried here he delivered his speech after like the inauguration, and then it was like he aspired, he gave, he tried to project populist air, while acknowledging this power, or the power of the military, as you're gonna see in the picture. And he tried to mention something about the aspiration to build a better future, and a new Egypt or a new republic. And then after a year, against the backdrop of mass protest, El Sisi, the commander in chief at the time, declared the removal of Morsi, with the support of some religious figure from Al Azhar and from the church, the Orthodox church. And you have here some civilians as well, most especially El Baradei. So we are trying to break down the three interwoven kind of dynamics. So we are gonna see in some detail, or examine in some detail, the popular mobilizations, or the process of the interaction between actually the protesters and the regime during the 18 days from 25th of January until February 11th. And then the possible trajectory of democratization, what kind of polity structure, and who was responsible for reshaping the political landscape, or the rules of the game. And it carried some potential of democratization, and what accounts for this reported regime transition. And then the final break, or it came with the installation of the new authoritarianism, and all these choices after the declaring the removal of Morsi, and the processes that followed this this decision of removal of the Brotherhood president. So we are trying to see how uncertain, the environment was, and unpredictable as well, and what kind of choices, the several actors made uh, in kind of an interaction between these actors or different players, and like pre-existing institutions or structural determinants, structural like properties or determinants. So here, like quick reminder about what we said before. It was like from 2004, it was like a remarkable breaking point, because like kifaya came into being, and ever since, the regime actually has immersed in kind of severe crisis or deep crisis. um, like the several protests or social and political protests actually broke out, and in order to pressure the regime, and after like breaking, decades of silence, of social compliance, and complete silence, and that was like in parallel with, some severe or radical economic changes that brought Gamal Mubarak and his business elite to the center of the political power, and his, like, especially the change team and the technocratic, government or of Ahmed Nazif, that led to radical social and economic changes in the Egyptian society. And it became like very obvious, this marriage between wealth and power. With like crony capitalists, they had this winner take all tendencies that provoked and politicized wide segments of the Egyptian society, that led, like, that made people, like, the vocalize their like to like push people to look for spaces to vocalize their or to express their challenges and economic and social grievances. And like the rupture point came with the Khaled Said, like a blogger who was beaten to death by the police forces. And it became like a common issue that many political forces from across the political, from like different ideological background, they had, like, the common cause, and then they decided like to act on or to have, like, to frame the issue of the police brutality and the emergency law, like abolishing, the emergency law on the top of the agenda, in addition to the social and economic demands. So like they arranged, or they coordinated, this day of rage on 25th of January 2011. So that was like basically between like six main groups from different ideological and educational background, including 6 April movement and Youth for Justice and Freedom. And the youth participated in El Barad'i campaign, and this, like, the National Front for Change, and like the youth of El Gabha party, and like the group based the Facebook, page, the group, like that was in charge of the Facebook page of We Are All Khalid Said, and then like some Muslim Brotherhood youth as well. So like six main like groups coordinated, this event, and it was like basically to clamor for social justice and human dignity and bread freedom, and hence, came the slogan and the chant bread freedom, social justice, and it had, like, human dignity in the beginning. So they actually they had, they organized, this these protests, and people took to the streets on 25th of January, on that day, and in order to protest, against the police brutality and these social and economic grievances in Tahrir Square. And like the police forces invaded, with tear gas in order to disperse the protesters. uh, but actually they continued, to arrange or to decided to escalate by arranging for what's called Friday of Anger, Gomat al-Ghadab, on the 28th of January, in the during the same week, in the same week, um, like in reaction, to these coordination efforts, and like the protest organizations. So government responded by cutting, of the all the internet connections, in order to prevent, any kind of online coordination, and disseminating, to prevent any kind of dissemination of information, because people actually just, posted, videos on the 25th of January, in order to inform, um, like the audience, or the masses, about what was going on. uh, so they actually prevented, any sort of communication or live streaming of the event during that day. But actually the people took the streets in a huge number, and actually it took people by surprise. Even the regime, like, was surprised, by the numbers of the protesters. And actually the violent clashes erupted between the police forces and the protesters during the day, and it led eventually to the withdrawal of the police forces, and it was like a total or a complete, chaos, and that led the regime to deploy military forces. So it gave people, like, and then, like, people started, like, in the like it started, like, to chant, or like, to win the military, to their side, by chanting, the people want, um, the people on the army are one hand. And during that day, people actually escalated the demands from, like, only from asking only for some political reforms, or some social and economic, more like, just an equitable social and economic policies. And they asked, like, bluntly and directly, for, like, toppling, or asking Mubarak to step down. So the people, so here, like, the slogan, the people want the fall of the regime. So from, like, the interaction of the protesters, they decided to escalate the demands. So it gave, like, the impression, especially after, deploying for military forces, uh, like it gave, like, the impression that the regime actually teetered on the brink of collapse. So that's why, people started, to arrange, or to ask for, or to stick to their demands, and to continue with, like, arranging, these protests. So Mubarak had, like, to show, or he had actually to address, the masses during that day. And he had to he announced, he actually neglected, kind of, he emphasized, the importance of restoring stability and order, and it's his responsibility to protect, the security of the country. And he made, like, broad reference to these social and economic grievances. And he did acknowledge, he showed kind of acknowledgement to the rights, especially, of the poor people, and their economic and social demands. But actually he didn't offer, package of policy, or, like, policy reform package. But he actually announced, that he would form a new government, and he appointed Omar Suleiman, like the head of the general intelligence apparatus, as his vice president, to be in charge of initiating, a dialogue with different political and different political forces. Uh, but actually again, like the protest kind of continued unabated, because, like, the what happened on the 28th of January, it did, politicize wide segments of the Egyptian society. even from like people like took part in the events. They didn't have any sort of political affiliation or any kind of they didn't participate in any sort of political activities before. So they had like common issue now or a common goal, just to bring down the regime, or like to force Mubarak to step down. um, so like Mubarak had to offer some concessions on February the 1st. So here you have like link the like the Guardian link. You have like access to full speech. But like in this speech, actually, he portrayed he actually still like called for, he did acknowledge the right of people to express their opinions and to protest. But actually he put people like in stark choice between him or like the case or stability, and he is the one, or the regime is the one in charge of securing or maintaining this stability. uh, so he just tried to notify or to frame it as like it's an issue between like stability and chaos, and ending these protests will secure this stability and will put an end to these kind of chaotic events. And then he mentioned something about like his initiative of forming he asked the government to resign, and the initiative to form a new government with new priorities and new duties in order to respond to the demands for political reforms. And he announced that he entrusted the Omar Suleiman, the vice president, to initiate this dialogue, or to meet with the oppositional figures and different political forces and factions in order to see how they would proceed with this political and democratic reform. And most importantly, he mentioned that he called upon the parliament to discuss amending articles 76 and 77 of the constitution, that was like regarding the presidential term, just to set like a specific period for the presidential term, like in order to make it clear that he mentioned something, that he didn't intend to run for like another elections or presidential elections. So by amending these articles will would put an end to any doubts that he would get around this. But actually, and people, he tried to play into people's emotions, reminding them about his how long he had served Egypt for 30 years, and he notified them about his role in October war. And people actually like some people like sympathized with the speech, and they did trust the regime to undertake some reforms from within. And some people actually left Tahrir Square. But on the following day, and it was like said like some people affiliated or loyal to the NDP, they actually raided, or they invaded Tahrir Square with camels, what became known as the Battle of the Camel. And actually many protesters got injured, and this provoked the protesters, and they felt kind of betrayal from the regime, and they started to organize or to continue with the organizations, especially for the a million march demonstrations in Tahrir Square. And they felt that the army and Tantawi they were kind of hesitant, so they tried to push them to take some sort of decision, or to defect from the regime, or from the elite circle, Mubarak elite circle, by like declaring or chanting that the army and the people are one hand. So and then protests, they continued, and they had their own sit-ins in Tahrir Square, and they declared that they would never move before the departure of Mubarak. So Mubarak made another he appeared one more time and addressed the masses, and especially on February the 10th. This time, he addressed the Egyptian youth directly in Tahrir Square, and he emphasized, his this patriarchal structure that he assumed, this father role, and remind again the protesters that he already responded to some of the demands, and he made it clear that he admitted some mistakes committed by the regime, and he offered some sort of promises to punish criminals, and especially for the victims of the protesters and the heavy-handed strategy the police deployed against the protesters. So he mentioned something that he addressed people today out of a true and an honest heart from a father to his sons. So he actually directed the speech to the Egyptian youth, and he made kind of a statement about the mistakes committed by the regime. So mistakes can happen in any political system and in any country, and the most important thing is to recognize them and trying to put things on the right track as quickly as possible, and to punish those who commit crimes. And this if the speech offered some sort of reform, the speech delivered on February the 1st was kind of too little, so this one was too late, because he offered more constitutional amendments. So he added to the 76, 77 that regarding the presidential term. He actually announced some amendments in Article 88, 93, and 198, in addition to 179, that as I'm gonna say it's related to it's an article actually gave the government or the regime discretionary power in order to violate civil and individual rights on the pretext of fighting and protecting the nation from terrorism, and to ensure security. So this from in his speech he mentioned abolishing this would pave the way and open the door, in his words, to abolishing the emergency law, and when the situation permits in the country. So actually, he added, in addition to the presidential term, he introduced some other constitutional amendments regarding the terms of the Shura, the Consultative Council, and the complete or the judicial supervision on the elections from the start to the end, from even from casting a ballot at the polling station, and during the vote counts until the announcement of the results, and especially Article 93, that actually the amendment he in order to offer to authorize or to empower the judicial authority in order to settle this disputes in the parliamentary elections. According to the constitution, the of 1971 that amended in 2007, Mubarak's constitution. So according to that actually ratified and amended under Mubarak, ratified under Sadat, and amended under Mubarak's reign. So Article 93 actually gave the people, the People's Assembly, actually the ultimate authority in order to decide on the valid elections, to to the only authority that had to arbitrate any kind of dispute regarding the electoral outcomes was like the People's Assembly. So the Court of Cassation, like the highest, Court of Appeals, so they can appeal to the Court of Cassation, but in order to complete, a kind of investigation into these kind of contestation of elections, but it had to be upon the referral by the speaker of the people, the president of the People's Assembly, and but the if if it decided that this membership would be deemed invalid, so this required like 2/3 majority, like the 2/3 the majority in the People's Assembly to invalidate the elections or the electoral result. So by amending this article would allow the judicial authority to have a say or to arbitrate any kind of electoral disputes. So before, Mubarak's speech on February, so it was kind of too late, but between the 1st of February and February and the departure of Mubarak on February 11th, so Omar Suleiman actually initiated, this dialogue, and he held series of meeting with the political opposition. So here on the top on your right hand side, so you hear see Hamdin Sabahi and Badawi from Al-Wafd, Nasserist and from Al-Wafd, and Naguib Sawiris, liberal, and Al-Katatni from the representative of the Brotherhood, and Rifat Al-Said of Al-Tajammu. And yeah, perhaps this one is Mustafa Bakri. So actually, old oppositional figures and the Brotherhood, they actually responded to this call for national dialogue, but the revolutionary or the Egyptian youth actually, or the revolutionary youth, or those who coordinated actually or organized the event from the beginning, they actually refused any sort of negotiation with the regime. So the revolutionary youth actually formed a coalition of the revolutionary youth in order to offer some sort of or some form of representation, and it was made up of 2 members from the 6 members I mentioned in the beginning, from 6 April and the Youth for Justice and Freedom, and Brotherhood Youth, and Kullina Khalid Said, or We Are All Khalid Said, and people from Al Barad'i campaign, and Al-Jabha Party, the youth of Al-Jabha Party. So it actually, when the protest actually they actually continued to organize masses, and people, white segments of society actually got politicized, and it became very clear that Mubarak became kind of a liability. So the military decided to defect, and Omar Suleiman on the February 11th actually announced that Mubarak stepped down, and he delegated the authority to the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, SCAF, to run the country. So after the downfall of Mubarak, they actually achieved social forces, they achieved remarkable success, because they were united, and they had common goals, but they didn't have something beyond this toppling or removal of Mubarak. So the process, the demands they got escalated in the process, and they had common issue on common cause to fight for, and to continue to pressure the national authority or the regime to achieve it. And once they fulfill it, actually any sort of coalitions started to unravel, and they had nothing in common after the removal of the head of the regime. they were like, fractious opposition without any clear, democratic vision. So they didn't have any sort of uh, even like after, the removal of the regime, they didn't have like any kind of tactical coalition about, the what kind of electoral coalition, they would form in order to or the polity structure they would, push for. So they didn't have any like, priorities or strategies after, the departure of the regime. And actually, like, again, like, the as we are gonna see, the opposition that has never actually solved, their disputes regarding, the political dynamics and the relationship between religion and state. It played itself, the same problems actually, and the same kind of scenario played itself out again after the departure of Mubarak. And then SCAF actually like became like the only authority, or the like the authority, like the authority that is in charge of running, the country's affairs. And they made like, the generals made, this vague endorsement of popular protest, and they made promises, of to maintain or to establish, a democratic future. But he became like, the like, if not the pivotal player that actively reshaped the political landscape and specified the rules of the game, with the help of the Muslim Brotherhood. So despite, this historical animosity between the Brotherhood and the military establishment, or the state in Egypt, so the SCAF perhaps, like, they perceived the Brotherhood as like the most the strongest or the most organized political opposition, that would, like, there was kind of a convergence, in their goals and targets during that period. So the Brotherhood actually needed, to reach power, or to capitalize on their organizational capacity, because they knew quite well that they were organizationally, they were much more powerful than any other, oppositional forces. And then the SCAF actually needed, or aim to rapid restoration of stability and order. So that's why, like, the perceived the Brotherhood as a partner of necessity, and the Brotherhood as well, like, approached SCAF in order to enable them to get access to power centers. Um, so like the Brotherhood actually quickly formed their own, like, political party. It's Freedom and Justice Party. um, and they tried to reach out to other or non-Islamist opposition right after, the removal of Mubarak. And they formed in the summer of 2011. So they formed this democratic alliance. So it was made up mainly of like the Freedom and Justice Party, the Brotherhood Party, and the Wafd Party, and some Nasrist groups, and Al-Ghad Party under the leadership of Ayman Noor. But actually, after a few months, like, the parties started to break away from the alliance, because out of, like, complaining about, this domineering role of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the believed, or the actually they broke away because they were forced to like a junior position. So the Brotherhood, like, had this kind of sense of superiority, and they had, this like domineering approach to the non-Islamist opposition. So they repeatedly, like refer to their slogan "Musharka la Mughalba," participation, not domination. But as we are gonna see, like the total dynamics actually refer to some sort of muscle flexing strategy, and they actually the majority of the seats, the parliamentary seats, and then they filed the candidate to the presidential elections as well, backtracking on initial promises that they would contest 1/3 of the parliamentary seats, and they didn't, they wouldn't field a candidate for the presidential elections. So the early stage of polarization and disputes between the Brotherhood and or the Islamist and non-Islamist opposition, it came with the what became widely known as the Brotherhood and the military amendments. So there was kind of the SCAF actually announced a list of the constitutional amendments with the caretaker government, like the list of like constitutional amendments actually they focused on these articles, and the non-Islam the Islamists actually, as we're going to see, transformed the entire process into like a fight for identity, to keep or to shield the Article 2 in the constitutions, and it was not subject, it was not on the list to start with. So these kind of these 9 articles that they were subject to like they got amended, and in order to be to be put to the public in the referendum to have a say on. So so Article 75, it actually it just introduced new eligibility criteria or requirement of presidential candidates, and especially regarding the nationality. So to disqualify basically those candidates with that who have like ever held nationality or citizenship in other country, or married to a non-Egyptian. So and then Article 75, it actually erased the restrictions on eligible candidates. So the constitution under Mubarak actually posed severe restrictions and made it roughly like impossible to get nominated to the to run for the presidency or to take part in the presidential race. So according to the amendment, so a candidate is eligible if he or she actually gets either the support of like 300 of I think 300 members of the parliament, or 30 members of the parliament, or have like a support of 30,000 voters from 17 different governorates, or a candidate who gets nominated by a registered political party that has at least one representative in either Al-Shura Council or the People's Assembly. So it actually it erased or relaxed these kind of restrictions on the nomination process. And Article 88 actually restored the judicial supervision on all like voting and counting procedures. And Article 193 again like authorized the Court of Cassation to decide on the parliamentary race disputes, because as I mentioned, the People's Assembly was the ultimate authority that was empowered to arbitrate or to have a say on these disputes. And then the Article 139, it actually stipulated that the vice president has to be appointed by the president within 60 days of taking office. And then Article 148, it actually restricted the conditions under which the president would declare the state of a state of emergency. So it firstly required required the parliamentary approval, and then it shouldn't last, more than for more than 6 months, and then any kind of further extension has to be or like has to be like had to be subjected to like a popular referendum to get an approval for any extension. Um, and then yeah, an article. I think it's 179, not 89. So I need to double check the one that removed the counter terrorism provisions. So it actually removed, this provision in order to that previously allowed for the trial of civilians in military court, and it allowed for like harsh surveillance measures. So by abolishing, this. This would relax, but it didn't happen, as we are gonna see. Um, and then like the article one. The article 189. So it actually it maintained the same procedures of the constitutional amendment that required the approval of the president and the speaker or the president of the People's Assembly. But it actually added to that the formation or to the appointment of 100 member constituent assembly within 6 months in order to rewrite the constitution in its entirety in 6 months in order to and to subject the new constitution to the popular referendum within 6 months. So like here, like the division occurred between proponents of yes campaign and no campaign. So yes campaign actually the although like the main or the underlying logic of these amendments was like quick restoration of stability and order by adjudicating to these kind of electoral the ballot boxes in order to stabilize the entire regime, but it actually they emphasized the identity and the Islamic Sharia instead. So proponents of yes campaign, they didn't actually pay attention, or they didn't actually frame it as like a restoration of stability and order, but it was kind of like like it's an identity issue in order to shield, as I mentioned, Article 2 of the Constitution that stipulates that the Islamic Sharia is the source of the legislation in Egypt. And it was not like even on the article was not even on the list. So it actually, and they started to mobilize voters for yes, because of that. Like if you say yes, it's kind of for Islam, and no for like non-Islamist. And then like the no campaign, actually they had their own logic, because they consider these amendments as, or they refer to these amendments as like military brotherhood amendments that would actually offer privileges to like the Brotherhood as the organized group, or Mubarak remnants, the flul of Mubarak, in order to take over these electoral or the positions, the elected positions. So if they allowed for quick restoration of stability and order by holding elections soon, so this would enable the Brotherhood and the former independents or former supporters of a Mubarak regime to reach power or to occupy these political positions. But again, like the political landscape, like started to get polarized between Islamist and non-Islamist, and it was kind of a reduction of the entire political dynamics and political process to this kind of identity politics. So when when non-Islamists started debating, the roadmap, and actually Yes campaign actually won, and it increased, the fears of the non-Islamists that the Brotherhood would and Islamists would take over power. Um, so when like non-Islamist or liberal forces started to ask for like kind of a military tutelage or like guardianship, and to ask for supra-constitutional guarantees in order to make sure al-Baradei himself, like hinted at the potential, like he warned of the elections that would bring, Nazis to power, that the democracy kind of is not reducible to these kind of electoral or these electoral procedures. There had to be some sort of supra-constitutional guarantees to safeguard, the civil nature of the state, and the civil rights and equal citizenship. So in reaction against like non-Islamist call for more demands or a different roadmap. So actually the Islamists and basically like the Salafis, and then like the Brotherhood endorsed the demonstrations. So in a clear like show of force, so they organized what was called Gum'at al-Sharia, like Friday of Sharia, and a million-man march, like uh, without appealing to or without any kind of support from a non-Islamist. They were able to mobilize a million people to occupy, like or to in Tahrir Square, in order to defend the Sharia. And it became known, and that was on July 29th in 2011. And it was like under this they had this banner and the slogan like identity and the will of the people, just to protect the identity and the will of the people. Um, and warned of any sort of deviation from the roadmap the people actually voted for, and they agreed on with the Supreme Council, or with the SCAF. And like it became known as Gumat Kandahar, that like the Islamists actually occupied Tahrir Square, and they showed their weight and their organizational capacity and their weight in the Egyptian society. So given like this kind of deviation and turnaround, by focusing mainly on identity politics, some other players or actors had to reposition themselves, or repositioned themselves regarding or in relation to Islamists. And then Al-Qutla al-Masriya in August 2011 came into being. One of the founders was Naguib Sawiris, like Coptic businessman in Egypt. And it gathered some liberal figures, and they started to ask for supra-constitutional identity, in order to guarantee or to offer more guarantees to civil rights and equal citizenship. And this would be the military or the SCAF. So they started to arbitrate, to adjudicate to the military, in order to come up with or to enforce these supra-constitutional guarantees. So what complicated the political scene, that the Brotherhood was not the only Islamic force in the political landscape. The Salafi call, or Da'wah al-Salafiyya, just decided to step in and to form its own party, Al-Noor party. So the Brotherhood actually was not the only Islamic actor, and although they were perceived as the flip side of the same coin, but they had different orientation, because like the Salafi or Noor party in this case, they had ultra conservative orientation. And this made the Brotherhood fear of getting outflanked by the Salafi group or the Salafi people, and this actually pushed the Brotherhood further to the right. in order to to have an alliance with the Salafis rather than an alliance with non-Islamists. Situation got clearer with the parliamentary elections. So before that, like there is kind of like a mutual suspicion between like the Brotherhood and the state, as I mentioned, and the SCAF or the military. So that's why like the state, had to trim, the Islamist fail, or to strike back whenever, it felt that the Brotherhood, would like cross a limit, or would gain, too much power to act independently or autonomously of the state or different establishment in the state, especially the military and the judicial establishment. So here, like before the parliamentary elections, the deputy prime minister Ali Silmi, he announced, this supra-constitutional principles. It became widely known as the Silmi document, وثيقة السلمي, in November 2011. So according to the document, or the supra-constitutional principles, it gave the army actually extra constitutional prerogatives. So especially among other things, two main articles 9 and 10, they offered the SCAF, or empowered the SCAF to be the only authority, or to have the authority over all the matters related to the armed forces, especially the budget. And it must be the armed forces must be consulted before issuing any kind of legislation related to the armed forces. And although the president is the supreme head of the armed forces, but the minister of defense is the general leader of the armed forces, and the president has the right to declare war, but after the approval of the armed forces. So it actually actually redefined or defined the relationship with a potential civilian president, and perhaps like an Islamist dominated parliament. That was right before the elections. So the Muslim Brotherhood strategically resorted to mobilization to the street politics in order to pressure SCAF. So this time they had to get along with the Youth Coalition and 6 April movement in order to coordinate, some sort of to coordinate protest in order to pressure SCAF, and then that became known as Muhammad Mahmoud events. So people protesters took to the streets, and they actually gathered in Muhammad Mahmoud street, and what happened was violent clash between police forces and the protesters, and it became obvious that the Brotherhood reached a deal with the SCAF. So they announced the withdrawal from the protest, and they focused instead on the elections, and they had elections are the solution in order to stabilize, to restore stability and order. So that's why it left a legacy of distrust between the revolutionary youth and the Brotherhood, because they felt that they were the Brotherhood betrayed them by engraving this kind of a deal with the military or with the SCAF, and actually left them in a confrontation with the police forces. So, and then the parliamentary elections, and then they decided to adopt this mixed electoral system, so that 2/3 of the seats were elected through closed list proportional representation in multi-seats constituencies, and then only one third of the seats to be contested by through two-seat local districts. And the Islamist gained landslide victory. So the Brotherhood gained more than 43%, so roughly 45. So this is by the proportional representation, and they had some party members. They actually competed for the individual seats in two-seat local districts. And surprisingly, the Noor party and the Salafis, they got like 1/4, 25% of the seats, and they together they captured or they dominated. They had control over like 70% of the parliamentary seats, which actually increased, the fears of Islamists of a potential, increased the fears of non-Islamists of a potential Islamist takeover. So the process actually was not only like conflictual between like two polarized, oppositional camps, but its dynamics actually pushed even more for polarization, and like push different actors, to defect and to reach out and to collude, with the different political rivalries, like the especially the military in this case. So the Brotherhood, when actually they entered, or they took control over the parliament. So what happened was like kind of a clash or a tension with the state authorities. So the first encounter happened when the parliament, the Islamist, dominated parliament. It actually issued in April 2011 what's called a political exclusion law. That was actually to exclude Mubarak figures from practicing politics or running for elections, and basically to exclude Shafiq from the electoral race. And actually the courts suspended and tried to suspend and to block the law, and then it was like declared unconstitutional in June 2011 in order to clear the way to Shafiq to run for the elections, the presidential elections. And then in April, in the same month, a administrative court actually decided or ruled, the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly on the ground that the SCAF constitutional declaration didn't state explicitly that the 100 member or the parliament could appoint, the members to the Constituent Assembly. So the participants of the parliament, some of the MPs or parliamentarians actually in the assembly rendered unconstitutional, and the ruling actually was welcomed by some Coptic and liberal figures that actually accepted the ruling in as a kind of a protest against the the dominant position of the Brotherhood. So, and it was actually like this kind of mixed, the electoral law. It actually was designed, to stop their advance, but it was actually it didn't actually stop, the Islamist advance, because of the perhaps the lack of, or other political parties, they didn't actually strike kind of roots in the Egyptian society. And they didn't have the experience by in campaigning, and they didn't have their solid or coherent electoral constituencies as the Brotherhood had when they tapped into their pre-existing social networks. If you remember in week in week 7 when we talked about, civil society and the Jam'iyyat al-Islamiyya, the Islamic associations. To be sure, like Islamist and non-Islamist was not like the only divide between different social forces. The like there's kind of another layer or another dimension of polarization and this kind of fragmentation of the demands. So most especially like the labor activism, like the labor played important role, like by announcing strikes in order to accelerate the process of the toppling of or the downfall of the Mubarak. But actually, these kind of social and economic demands got marginalized, in the process, especially when like identity issues when they were kind of overtaken by um, like identity issues or identity politics. So like the the Brotherhood's parliament actually it enacted or reinstated, the like the the previous formula, corporatist formula that existed, under Mubarak. So like before the parliament, like the one independent trade union actually emerged out of the protest. So the Egyptian Federation of Independent Trade Union actually broke with the monopoly or the monopoly of the Egyptian Trade Union Federation, and they formed their independent union. It became the fifth. If you remember, I mentioned four: the real estate tax collectors and teachers and health technicians, and the CTUWS, the Center for Trade Unions and Worker Services, that actually established in 1990s in order to offer to support, the workers' strikes and to offer, some legal and other support services to the workers. So it became like the fifth independent union after the uprising. But the Brotherhood actually endorsed a proposal that permit the proposal actually permitted only one trade union in one enterprise. It was like roughly the same like the legacy of the corporatist structure or arrangement, and that actually that protected, the legal status of the ETUF, the Egyptian Trade Union Federation, and its leadership. And then like right after, the departure of Mubarak, it was like the SCAF actually issued a military decree number 34 to criminalize, strikes, because like on the grounds that these strikes harm the economy and impede the work of public institutions. And then it turned into a law, number 34, and promulgated or issued by the Brotherhood Parliament. So they actually supported, this criminalization of any kind of labor strikes. So like so during that period, like as I mentioned, like SCAF actually maintained, all the threads perhaps of the game, and what's called like deep state, every now and then they'd strike back in order to trim Islamist sail or to undermine and to erode, any kind of rising political power. So the Supreme Constitutional Court, like 2 days before the runoff, as we're going to see when we are going to talk about the presidential elections, so they nominated Khairat Shatter, and then the committee disqualified Shatter because he had like he stood before in front of a military trial, and some legal technicalities disqualified him. So that's why the Brotherhood decided to nominate Morsi, and he actually he had to go into the second round with Shafi. So like 2 days before the runoff, the Supreme Constitutional Court actually ruled the dissolution of the parliament. So it was like on the grounds that if you remember, like 1/3 of the seats had to be elected by like this two-seat local districts. So it's not like, for independent and individuals. So like, party members technically were not allowed, to compete for these seats. And then like the constitutional court actually mentioned that like some members actually, especially from the Brotherhood, Freedom and Justice Party, they competed for the one-third seats. So that's why it ruled, the dissolution of the parliament, and it nullified nullified as well like the political isolation or the political exclusion law in June 2012. And then like the SCAF had like its own like constitutional declaration in June 2011. So according to this declaration, it was like supplementary constitutional decree. It gave the right, to the SCAF to veto, any clause issued by the Constituent Assembly if like, any kind of constitutional clause actually conflicts with the goals of the revolution or constitutional principles from Egypt's previous constitution. So, and if the assembly or the Constituent Assembly overturned the veto, so the matter had to be referred to the Supreme Constitutional Court in order to deliberate or to have its ruling. And it empowered the constitutional supplementary constitutional decree empowered the SCAF to establish or to form a new constituent assembly if the existing one failed to finish, the writing the constitution within, the specified period. But actually it finished, and it was like, Islamist dominated assembly, and it preserved, the military privileges, and the constitution got ratified in referendum in December 2012. So, and the constitution actually maintained, the privileges, most especially the military approval. The military had to offer, approval to the Minister of Defense, and so the president, would name, a Minister of Defense, but the military approval is a requirement, and it maintained. The constitution actually maintains or enshrined, the military autonomy with especially its jurisdiction and the military court, and like the maintaining, this kind of degree of autonomy over budget to be like out of reach of any parliamentary oversight. Okay, so we can go like, quickly through the presidential elections, and then so like so in the first round, astonishingly, like the Muslim Brotherhood actually gained 25% of the national votes, and the revolutionary, it was like a division within, what was called like a revolutionary camp. Hamdin Sabahi, like a Nasserist and nationalist candidate, Abu Futuh, like a former member in the Brotherhood and portrayed as a liberal Islamist, and he gained like 17.7, and Sabahi 21, and then Khalid Ali, like a human rights lawyer and like leftist activist, gained 0.5% of the total vote. So that was actually, so the Muslim Brotherhood candidate, the Morsi had to go into, to go for a second round with the like one of the Mubarak's, one of the like figure of Mubarak's regime, Ahmed Shafi. So in the runoff, like the Morsi tried to emphasize, this discourse of unity by like قوتنا في وحدتنا. It's like our unity, our strength in our unity. And he tried to gather, different oppositional, to draw together, to bring different, oppositional figures in order to discuss or to give kind of assurance to non-Islamists that they would have a say or take part in decision-making process when he takes office. And he promised, to offer some sort of power sharing mechanisms and to form or to appoint a national salvation government to be headed by like a politically independent figure, like especially non-Muslim Brotherhood figure. But obviously, the different parties or different oppositional figures, they had different interpretation of the actually they met, in ferment in so the it was like it became known as like ferment agreement. And like after his like after he assumed office, he actually won the elections by a very narrow margin. He got like 51.7%, and Shafiq actually gained 48.3%. So actually he appointed Hisham Qandil as like a prime minister, and he was not like former or a former or a formal member of the Muslim Brotherhood, but actually he was considered as a Brotherhood affiliated figure by different oppositional forces. And although like his cabinet actually was made up of um, like many technocrats or technocratic figures, while the control of the main ministers like the defense and the foreign affairs and the interior, they actually remained in the hands of Mubarak's remnants or professional bureaucrats from Mubarak era. So actually, it was like kind of a dispute or a contestation that the Brotherhood actually assumed power, and they got around this ferment agreement, and there was kind of brotherhoodization of the state apparatus or the political different political positions in the state. So we're gonna see like next lecture we're gonna talk about this is how like popular mobilization actually led to the downfall of Mubarak, and it opened kind of a horizon to potential democratization or installation of a democratic a new democratic regime. So actually here like polarized opposition and the Muslim Brotherhood, like the Islamists dominated or took control over the parliament, that actually the state actually apparatus or the judicial establishment dissolved that in order to right before the runoff, in order to undermine the power basis of the Muslim Brotherhood. And then the Brotherhood the Brotherhood candidate actually won the elections, and he assumed office. So we're gonna see how actually the Brotherhood president actually lacked any clear, or the Brotherhood generally speaking lacked any clear understanding of democratic practices and what kind of democratic coalition, and they had like some sort of miscalculations that they would actually they erroneously actually believe that to anchor its power as a group across different or all the state institutions without reaching a consensus or an agreement with the Brotherhood. And they had like different belief about the relationship with the military after securing their its privilege, constitutional prerogatives and privileges. And we are going to see how like this short tenure in office like triggered counter mobilization and led to like any kind of a withdrawal of support for democracy, and paving the way to the installation of a new authoritarian regime. Okay, bye.